Hi, I'm Vicky Wolfe Bender, Senior Director of Marketing at PBLWorks. In this segment, you'll hear from two inspiring math educators, Melanie Grosso and Kaci McCoy, who each implemented one of our Teach project units with their students this fall. They recently joined me for a webinar to reflect on their experience, what it was like to bring project-based learning to life through Teach, how their students responded, and what they discovered along the way. Let's listen in to their stories. First, I want each of our panelists to tell you a little bit about the project they chose out of the 24 and why they selected it. So, Kaci, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about the project you picked?
Right, so I teach middle school math, seventh and eighth grade math. So the project that I chose was the eighth grade unit, Get Your Game On. The project is built around transformational geometry standards for eighth grade. So things like basic rigid motions and dilations on a coordinate plane. The driving question was, how can I create a digital game on Scratch to reflect the interests of teenagers? And our district does something called cycle assessments every 6 weeks. And each 6 week block focuses on specific standards, and then we test on those standards. And this particular project was perfect for the geometry cycle, which was our first cycle this school year. It went a bit longer than the prescribed 4 weeks that's listed in PBL Teach, but that's the beauty of project-based learning is you can modify, you can extend, you can shorten, you can add things, you can take things out, however you want to fit the needs of the students in your class.
Love it. Melanie, which project did you pick and tell us why you selected it?
I also did a geometry project. I'm currently teaching sixth grade math. So I picked Pack Perfection, which is a geometry unit that's focused on primarily volume and surface area. But like with PBL, you have multiplying decimals in there, you have unit rates. So it touches a little bit more than just the geometry section. And the driving question asks students, how can we make a backpack that fits the needs of our clients? Which was really cool because students had all different kinds of clients, and so they had to adapt it accordingly. So geometry as well, sixth grade math, and the kids had a really, really fun time making backpacks.
And they actually physically make a backpack, a model of a backpack in that project. I think.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little bit about logistics and scheduling because I think sometimes, and you touched on this, it took a little longer, Kaci, in the project you picked. Tell us a little bit about how your project ran, how you balanced it with the rest of your curriculum, and with the standards that you need to teach.
Sure. So, like I mentioned, it was prescribed for about 4 weeks, but it lasted probably about seven, simply because I needed to add in some lessons from our curriculum just so I could make sure all of the standards that were going to be tested were covered effectively. Um, so I was able to get through a large portion of the project with the add-ins that I decided upon in the 6 weeks. And then I planned the seventh week, which was carryover, of course, for refining their projects and doing their presentations, which in this case was a game expo where they invited people to come, experience their game. And there were snacks involved and what teenage snacks. So. Um, Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Melanie, what's your take?
Mine ran a little bit longer. It called for about 4 weeks. It ran for about 5 weeks, which I think was both me doing it for the first time with Teach, and just different adaptations in our schedule if we had an event or something. But yeah, definitely did run a tiny bit longer. I felt towards the later half of the project, students, and this is what I love about PBL, they were kind of I don't need you anymore. And so they were just moving through it where I think in the beginning it's a little bit of an adjustment for the teacher and it's an adjustment for the students. It's a little bit of a different learning style than they're used to. But it definitely I felt in the pack perfection, you got to say that 6 times, pack perfection project. Um towards the end, they were just, it was very autonomous, very hands-on, and it began moving much quicker.
And did you feel like you were covering the standards you needed to cover?
Yeah, I actually feel like, and I think a lot of the misconception is that we have to hit all these things and the project's only going to hit certain things. And for some, I'm sure that's true. But I felt that we hit the standards and more. It brings in, with surface area, we have to talk about how much fabric needs to cover the bag. So students need to research, which is all provided in one beautiful PowerPoint by PBLWorks, all different fabrics, their prices. And so students are deciding, well, how much do I need for a square inch? So now we're bringing in unit rates, which will be beautiful for the next unit when we go into ratios and they have to that revisit. So it has a really circular approach where we're not just sectioning off standards. I think a lot of times students feel disconnected from curriculum because the curriculum is disconnected, where this integrates it all in one piece. So I definitely feel like hit the standards and more, which is nice because the kids just, see that we're in the geometry unit. And then not that I'm sprinkling in things everywhere.
I love that. So let's talk about assessment. This is often a concern, not just of leaders, but teachers too. So tell us a little bit about how you were able to assess students throughout the project, and if you had to make adaptations. You talked a little bit about adaptations, Kaci, but adaptations in order to assess throughout the project. And let's go backwards. Melanie, why don't you go first on this one?
So if you're worried about assessment, don't, because I feel like I assessed more in this project. And typically with PBL, I feel like there's constant assessing and constant feedback, which might sound scary, but I promise it's not. Because you can assess verbally. Students are also assessing each other. A big component of PBL works is the critique the work, not the person, which middle schoolers love making a joke and then critiquing each other. But they're also giving each other feedback, and students are much harsher on each other than I find myself to be on them, which when you really get the critique the work part down, not the person, they start to find that knack. Um, but you're constantly monitoring, you're looking at each component and how it feeds to the next. So I felt that there were so many formative assessments within just the PBL Works curriculum alone, and how you're formatively assessing students. Um, I did use a lot of adaptations just based on what my students were asking. So you're picking a client in the community. I had a student who wanted to make a backpack for Hermione Granger. She's not real. So, we kind of had to do a little scene, and we actually ended up using a chat bot to make Hermione Granger, and she got to ask her all the questions about what she wanted in her bag. So in that way, a lot of adaptation. So a lot of my copy versus the PBL copy. So you are definitely assessing your students. I find I'm assessing them more with PBL than your standard curriculum.
I love the Hermione example. Kaci, what about you?
So tagging on to what Melanie said about like that you're constantly assessing because you're really getting more of an opportunity to sit back. You're not, it's not like your typical I'm on the stage delivering instruction. It's more you're engaging with the kids. You're going through the project with the kids. You're there to guide them and help them through the project. They're doing all the heavy lifting, which is that's how it should be because the person who's doing the heavy lifting is the person who's doing the learning. Um, I feel like you're spending a lot of time assessing the whole child, not just how well they grasp this mathematical concept or this English concept or whatever concept the PBL happens to be focused on. Get your game on was a lot of the soft skill of self-regulation. So you're really pulling in SEL, social emotional learning ideas and concepts as well, which you hear a lot about in the news. Like kids don't know how, so many kids are dysregulated these days. And there's literacy. I mean, even though it was a math heavy PBL, there's so much literacy, digital literacy,
Mm.
actual physical reading and comprehension. I mean, it really instructs the whole child. Um, Lots of formative assessment, lots of opportunities, even if I felt like a child was struggling with something mathematical, while kids were working with their project partners or in their learning groups for the day, their instructional groups for the day, I could pull kids to the side and do quick little mini lessons in small groups and then send them back to get to work. It was really great for implementing like a workshop model for instruction.
Mm, that's great. So talk to me about the students. What did you notice about them? Some of your stories are kind of coming out, but any standout stories of students through these projects, or even once the projects ended, that are worth sharing with the group? I don't know who wants to go first on this one.
I can jump in. I'm thinking of a particular student that he's just an amazing kid, and really, really, really struggles. And even before the school year started, I had his support team just be like, he wants so badly to learn, and he's trying and he's working so hard. And I definitely within the first week was like, okay, this is my kid. We're gonna work with him. And he just blossomed. He was engaged and excited, and really pushed himself. And I'm talking about one student in particular, but it really was with the whole class. I often find in math, it's quite a challenge for students to use mathematical terminology. If I want them to use the word dimensions or squared units or cubic units and where that's coming from, um, I remember just being at my desk at one point, I'm looking, and kind of assessing them and seeing what they're saying. And I had a group was like, no, it can't be cubed. It can't be cubed. There's only two dimensions. It's only base and height. And I just had this little moment where I was like, I'm not going to cry because they always make fun of me for crying because I always am so proud of them when I hear these moments. Um, for them to make that connection that, okay, we say cubic units, we're saying to the power of three because we have length, width, and height. There's something actually mathematically happening. It's not abstract to them, which I just thought was really beautiful. And I know we say so much like, oh, it's the real world application or the real world problems. And I say that all the time. And then I think like, well, then what do they think is happening in here? What is happening in the classroom? If the real world's happening outside and I'm bringing it in, then what are they applying and learning? And I feel like it takes real world out and it's just your world that really is, you are connecting it to everything that's happening around you. And I think they're starting to look at the world differently and have these math lenses. And now moving into the next unit, I I mean, we started another unit, all the kids are like, where's the launch? Where's the project? And I'm like, I'm still learning it. I want to take all the tools that I learned from this project before I go into the next one. Because I had a notion of what PBL was until I started doing PBL Teach. And it really does take it to another level. So it's sweet to see them excited, and every single day they have asked me when we're starting the next project. So it's beautiful. They've really blossomed.
That's great. I love that they're asking for the next project. That just warms my heart. Kaci, what are you seeing or hearing?
My project leaned heavily on coding. It was there, I mean, because we're using Scratch and it's mostly block coding, which is for beginners. And I am not proficient in that. And I'm not generally one to go out and teach myself how to code. Um, but I have so many kids who love to code and they spend their free time coding. And they're not normally the kids that generally are the loud ones in the class that make themselves stand out. They generally tend to hide in the shadows. So I used them as the experts. I would get a question from someone like, how do you do such and such? And I'd be like, okay, guys, who knows how to do that? All right, this student knows how to do that. They're your expert. You go ask them. And to see them kind of blossom and be like, wow, I'm needed by my peers. I have expertise to share. And just and like I talked earlier about the getting the whole child involved, getting those interpersonal relationships going across social groups in a classroom, because you normally have like your little pods of friends and they kind of stick together, but this really pulls kids together in different ways and gets them to experience each other as people who have ideas, who have really important ideas to share. Um, it was, I loved seeing their confidence come out.
Mm.
That's my favorite part.
It's so powerful to see a student discover that they know something and that what a gift you gave them. That's fantastic. So tell us, as a teacher, what aspect of Teach was most helpful to you?
I can go with that one. So Melanie already touched on this. I've taught in a PBL environment for almost 10 years. Our school is a STEM-based school and we're a project-based learning school. So our K through 6 students have a PBL block after lunch every day. And then in middle school, we develop and teach PBLs within our content area. So, and I've been to PBL World 5 different times I've actually done PBL 101 twice. And the second time taught me even more than the first time. It was amazing. Um, so I'm fairly familiar with the idea and the format of a gold standard PBL, and it was nice to see and work with an actual gold standard PBL from start to finish that somebody else developed so that it could point me in the right direction for improving PBL units I've already written, PBL units that I have ideas about that I'm looking for inspiration for writing for the future. Um, the other thing that was really, really helpful were the coaching videos that are embedded in the program. I would get so stuck on something and hyper focused on something, and I would be like, okay, I need someone to talk me through this. So I'd push the little video for that lesson. And the particular coach that was speaking through the video was like, just brought it to my attention that hey, try this. It wasn't an actual conversation, but it was still like, oh, wow, I would have, it gives you that feeling of bouncing ideas off of each other, even though you're not really having a conversation. So those two things were really great for me.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you're making the case for uh, even an experienced PBL teacher can elevate their teaching practices with this. And that's a fantastic endorsement. Melanie, how about you?
The teaching videos are, I think that's my favorite part. I am biased, I think, because at PBL World over the summer, I had Brian, who was my facilitator, and does a lot of the videos. If you're looking for someone to like pump you up and get you into it, he is the one. And so watching his videos, they do make you think of things maybe that you didn't consider. And I think I haven't been doing PBL as long. I would say probably the last 4 or 5 years is when I really started jumping into it. Um, and I think for someone who has never done PBL, is like, what is this acronym that they keep repeating? We love acronyms in education. I think for any teacher, you could jump in. It is so streamlined for anybody to understand it. It's so guided. You can even filter out the resources from teacher resources to student resources so you can see both ends. But this has been my dream to have something like this. I've been following PBLWorks for as long as I've been teaching. And when they came out with this, you're always a little hesitant. I think with new curriculum, we're always being inundated with the new research and the new studies and the new this, but this is like creme de la creme. It's so clean, it's so easy. You can jump around. They have so many guided practices. So if you're feeling fearful or you're thinking, Oh my goodness, this is another thing I have to put on my plate. I think of teach as like teach is the plate, and you already have all the ingredients and it's just kind of holding everything together. So don't be scared. It is it's PBL for dummies and the I don't mean that in a bad way, but anybody can jump into it. It's really it's everything. So don't feel freaked out.
I love that advice. I don't think we'll use PBL for dummies, though. So that kind of leads to advice, which is our last question, and we're right on time, so this is great. What advice would you give to a school or district leader considering purchasing Teach for their educators, or to an educator who wants to advocate for Teach to their school or district leader? Think of that either way. What advice would you give?
I can go ahead. I'd say do it. Definitely bother your admin, bother your district leaders. I felt really blessed that when I approached my admin about wanting to go to teach, I feel lucky and blessed. And they were like, yeah, and let's get your whole team to go. And I think I'm particularly lucky in that way that I find that they really support me in what I want to do. But there's even for PBL World, and I'm sure this can be adapted for Teach. They provide a whole letter for you on how you can approach your admin if that's something you want to do. And it gives you a lot of good tips and tricks. But I think ultimately, your customer is your student. And I think students are really wanting something different. I don't know how many fellow math educators get the when are we going to use this question? And you do PBL and I don't have that question ever when I'm doing PBL because students are just already making that connection. So they're hungry. They want to learn. They want to learn in a way that makes sense to them. I've taught sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, and middle schoolers love doing anything that is relevant to them. But I think that applies to any student. They want to feel like they're autonomous over their learning and that they are in their learning. Um, that Kaci had spoken about, and something I feel like you can approach your district and your admin with is that students they just they want to be heard. And I know that sounds, everybody's like, oh, your student wants to be heard, but really they just want to be a part of their learning. And this was told to me in Teach, and it's true, like they are the genius. They have the knowledge. They're not gonna, it's like a little bird. They just don't need you anymore, they're gonna fly and do their own thing. And I think that's so important as a teacher to not feel needed. You just really want to facilitate. And they thrive. They start asking each other for help. They're like, don't even know I'm in the classroom until I'm saying something. So it's a really beautiful way to put leadership and owning your own education and your learning into the hands of the students, and not that we are the all-powerful knowing beings. They're actually that. And I even wrote on my board in big letters, this is what Brian had told me during PBL World, that you are the genius. You have the knowledge already. I'm just here to push you out of the nest.
So my advice is more towards going towards what Sir Ken Robinson said is we're no longer in like this industrial era of sitting in rows of desks and the teacher is delivering the instruction and the student is the sponge absorbing that's not how we operate. We're not going to be cogs in a wheel in a factory when these kids enter the real world in their occupations. So if you're looking for a way to like move more towards like a PBL model, maybe in your grade span or in your grade level or school wide, like we are. This provides scaffolding for anybody. Like I mentioned, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm still learning just by doing these gold standard PBLs that have already been written. I mean, it provides scaffolding for veteran teachers, new teachers, onboarding new teachers and staff to your school so that they're not coming in with a preconceived notion of, well, okay, this is what learning looks like to me. You're giving them your vision and this is what it looks like for your school. Also, when you start your 14-day trial, please do not be afraid of how messy it is not linear. And I'm a type A linear personality, and just don't be afraid of it. It might not seem like it's coming together. You're like, but wait, where's this piece? And like Melanie said, like it all comes together from all these different points. And in the end, you'll see how it all ties up nicely in a neat little bow. And you'll be like, oh, that was amazing. And your kids will absolutely love it because they learn through play. And this is just how big kids play. We're always talking about how we can get kids to play more. We need to get more outside time, this, that, and the other thing. Well, if you're looking for movement in your classroom, you're looking for ways for them to collaborate, work on their soft skills, and just be kids. This is amazing. It's the way to go.
Can I touch on something just because that made me think of
Yeah.
something? I and I don't know if this is maybe the feeling of people, particularly in this webinar, but I have definitely met teachers and been in environments where I think teachers think, well, like my kids can't do PBL, like my school, it wouldn't work. I've done PBL in charter, public, and private. Students thrive in every environment. Students want, and I fundamentally believe everybody wants to learn, they want to feel engaged. So if you think this is something maybe that your district wouldn't support, or that maybe you're going to get pushback at your school because it doesn't fit in this box, it is it is adaptable for every school, every student. So don't think, well, we have these problems at our school, we have these problems at our school. It is every student can jump into this, and every student wants to. They want to get into a project, and PBLWorks does a really good job of, we talk about, we teach the lesson and then there's the project at the end, that's the dessert. And PBLWorks says it's the project is the meal. They're learning by doing. And there's so many ways to differentiate it based on your class and your students. So just know that every kid really can do it. It's adaptable.
That's fantastic. And what a great, oh, Kaci, jump in.
Yeah, Melanie made me think of something. And I saw somebody in the chat saying that they're a speech language therapist, and they're like, I'm looking for a new way to freshen up my practice, and I'd love to be able to incorporate project-based learning. And I'm going to tell you that we this librarian has moved on from our site and onto a different field, but for like the first 7 or 8 years that we were open, we had a librarian here that went to PBL World with us and incorporated PBL in his library science classes, when the kids would come in and do the little library skills. And so anybody in a school setting or that works with kids can modify this for their own practice. It's not just for teachers.
That's great. I feel like, to a certain extent, this was an advertisement for PBL World. That was not intentional. PBL World 2026 is next June, and we actually open registration on Monday. So well timed. That was unintentional. But we do offer teach workshops at PBL World. We offer a short 1 day teach workshop at our institutes. We have an institute in Nevada in February. So there are opportunities to dip your toe into teach if you're interested, or our sort of flagship PBL 101 course and other courses as well. So check that out on Monday on our website. So thank you, Melanie, Kaci. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, sharing what your students felt and thought and continue to bug you about, and just your expertise with the group. I really, really appreciate that. I want to be sure that if there are questions coming in, we can address that. So Natalie, I'm looking to you, but also want to be sure that those on the call can take this web link, which we'll also put in the chat, which will take you to the sign up for the 14-day trial. Thanks, Natalie, for getting that into the chat. So that you can try this out yourself. Spend 14 days just poking around. There are a few things in the trial that you don't have access to. So just know that if I showed something and you're like, I can't do that. I can't customize my own Google Slide or Google Doc. It's just because that's in the trial version. You have some limitations, but do encourage you to get in there and test it out and take it for a spin. So, Natalie, are there questions that we can answer for the group? Anything come up? Oh, Natalie is messaging me directly that all the questions have been answered in the chat or in the Q&A. Um, but I'm reading in the chat some other things that have popped in. Just to see if there's anything that we need to address. So give me just a second. Rachel, I think you're asking a question or posting about using AI to get some inspiration around projects, and certainly AI has been a tool to support project-based learning and certainly project idea generation more recently. I'm curious, Melanie or Kaci, do you have a comparison at all between an AI generated project versus what you see and teach?
This is heads above what you could get produced in AI because uh, it's developed by real people who have worked with real students, and AI hasn't. I mean, you can put your own ideas in an AI program and have it populate a project for you, but I don't feel like it would have all the gold standard elements. That's just my 2 cents.
I think so too. I think it's always a good addition. I mean, I used a AI chatbot in my project for students who had imaginary clients. Um, but it just doesn't quite hit. And I'm all for integrating AI. I'm there. The kids are going to need to know how to use it. It's part of their life. Um, but the videos and the resources, and in my opinion, it's not comparable.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I want to thank everybody for being with us and joining us today. Again, be sure to check out your 14-day teach trial. I hope you get in there and see it for yourself. And Natalie, would you do me a favor? I saw you dropped for somebody who had a question, the way that they could reach out to our sales team if they have if they're interested and want to talk to someone. Could you drop that link in the chat for folks? In case there are situations. I saw some questions about micro schools and multiple campuses. Those are questions best answered by our sales team because they can really help problem solve very specific situations. And if you just fill out that form that Natalie just dropped at that link, we'll help you solve your specific situation. That's a lot easier than trying to solve it in a Q&A or in a chat question. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope you all have a great evening.